No, Wuthering Waves is not better than Genshin Impact. I tried going back to the game again when Zani came out, and honestly, the experience was horrible. Like if you want to play a 4 star in Wuthering Waves, they suck. They suck. At least in Genshin, even if the earliest characters like Ember suck, I still can kind of see their value. There are YouTubers who tried using Ember to get to the newer regions, trying to use Kaya to get the newer regions, and they managed to do it. They managed to do it. It's crazy, but they managed to do it. In fact, I would say that the issue with being a new player is not because of the characters, because I tried to run with Kaya from Mondstadt to Fontaine and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it and I managed to do it regardless without the Kazuha. So it's not really the characters that the problem for me as a new player. It's more like the sheer amount of story that you need to go through without a skip button. Now, here's the thing. Wuthering Waves does have a skip button, but the experience compared to Genshin in the older region is horrible. Sure. Listening to Paimon Yap is still one of my downsides as to why I really hate playing the story in Genshin. Like, can they just add a skip button so I don't listen to Paimon Yap? No, they can't do it. But at the very least, if you don't play the story quest in Genshin, let's just say that you do not want to touch the Akon quest at all. You don't want to touch the world quests at all, which is what I'm doing even at AR60. You can still play the game. You can still clear ley lines. You can still explore. You can still listen to the OST. It's not a problem. It's really not a problem. And nowadays, the newer player has characters like Farina, Skirk, Mavlika, and stuff like that. So if you have a new character and you want to explore Genshin, again, it's not a problem. The problem for me in Wuthering Waves is that the older regions is just unplayable. I tried exploring the older regions by going to the teleport waypoint, like how I would always do it in Genshin, where I just go to an Archon statue, I just click navigate, and then I just kind of run, and hope I don't die being killed by Hilichurls. But it's like at least in Genshin, I can just run to the place I want. Like yeah, sure, clearing Dragon's Spine as an early player was a pain in the ass, but no one is forcing you to play Dragon's Spine until you are maybe at a higher level and you can just tackle the challenges on your own. It's like in Wuthering Waves, I try to go to the place where they need me to do the quest, or I try to explore the older regions, and the infrastructure, the design just suck compared to Monster. Like the older regions, the design is so murky, so unattractive, and so unmemorable that I just don't want to play the game. Like, yeah, Rinascita is amazing. The character designs in Rinascita is arguably better. No, but it's like if you don't have the characters from Rinascita running around with the older characters from the older regions feels awful. No, now I'm not trying to say that Genshin doesn't have the same issue as well. But here's the thing. It wasn't until AR 51 or 2 that I finally got Venti as my first Archon character. It wasn't until AR 45 that I got a 5 star character, which is Kurting. And even getting Kurting and Jean alone would have really solved a lot of the issues that I had trying to clear quests that required me to use Joe Traveler to climb up. But when I am on a new account, I want to play the Liyue regions. I just pull out my Joe Traveler and I just kind of build the rocks and just kind of climb, which, even if it is a frustrating experience, was something that I didn't get to try when I was a beginner back then, that I could just try it now because the new region has so many things. Right. And the thing is, at least in Genshin, the 4 star characters are playable. They are fun. Xingqiu carried me all the way from AR 13 until AR 45. And until today, even after Netland comes out, Xingqiu is still one of the most viable 4 stars. Fischl is still one of the most viable 4 stars. Diona is still one of the best 4 stars. Noelle is still one of the best 4 stars. Even Barbara at early game is a good 4 star. Like if you want to get Barbara as a healer, they give it to you early game. You have Barbara early game to help you clear the bosses and to act as a healer. Even back then after Kokomi came out, people were saying how like Barbara is better than Kokomi. So yeah, it's like even if Barbara can compare to the new 5 star and 4 star healers nowadays, she was at least a good healer. She helped you to get to full health, or at least to 90% with her alt. You can still kind of do freeze calm with her and Kaya together. If you want a distraction, Amber is still the best, even if her kid sucks. Yeah, it's like the 4 stars in Genshin are fun to use, even if they're clunky. Even until today, I still kind of use Amber for fun in Imaginarium Theater if I could use her just to use as like a side slot. Even Xinyan is usable. She was my Diluc before I got Diluc, and she works fine, honestly. Yanfei is also my Pyro DPS before I finally got Alekino. Like my a lot of my basic teams in early Genshin are 4 stars, and I still manage to clear. Of course, there are times where co-op helps to get the things easier, but it's like if you want to explore a region, you need a pyro archer, they give it to you. If you need a hydro, they give it to you. If you need a shielder healer, they give it to you. In Wuthering Waves, the 4 stars, I don't understand their kit, I don't understand their playstyle, and they're just, I really hate the experience. Like when I tried using the 4 stars in Wuthering Waves, even as a trial, I hate the experience so much. Power creep not being real in Wuthering Waves is really just people glazing the game. There's no way you can see characters like Phoebe and then say that power creep is not real. The character that has been carrying me until today is actually Jian Xing, because my healers, if I even have healers, are just useless. I don't understand the artifact system. I don't understand why they need to add a cost to it. Like at least in Genshin, even if my artifacts are shit early game, I can at least just implement whatever I want. Like let's say I have a 3 star artifact, I can just put it onto my character and just move along with it. Even if I were to use a 3 star weapon, which I still use on my Alekino, and I can still dish out at least 20k damage on E, at least it's a fun experience. I really have fun in Genshin's combat. I have fun fighting the early bosses like the Pyro Flower, I forgot its name. I really have fun fighting the Cryo boss in Mondstadt. Like whenever I need to clear the BP, I just go back to the old Mondstadt bosses. But in Wuthering Waves, it's like, what the heck am I doing? Clearing that gorilla boss for talent farming was such a pain, honestly. And collecting goods in Wuthering Waves is so clunky because I can't even find anything. The interface is just so dirty compared to Genshin, where it's like, oh yeah, there's a flower over there. You can just kind of clear the, like, you just kind of get the flower. You see the berries, you just kind of collect it. No, and the UI in Genshin is just a lot cleaner, a lot smoother. And I also love going around Genshin taking photos. The thing is, in Genshin, even after I quit, I do have a nostalgia. Like if I didn't play the interlude quest and just ignored whatever was going on in the quest, I would still play Genshin. I am just quitting the game because I refuse to support them when their story doesn't add up to the trailer. That's my biggest bane when it comes to the game. But character wise, I have Navia, I have Alakino, which I really wanted to take a photo with Downslave, which is why I'm drawing Alakino and Downslave again. But I just do not want to go through the trouble of talking to Paimon and then meeting the Enslave and then taking the photos. But other than that, just doing regular ley lines, trying to fight bosses. It's fun. The end game mode in Genshin is definitely shit, and I can definitely get why people are complaining about it. I'm also going to complain about why I do not like the end game in Genshin and my issues with it. But yeah, it's like at least in Genshin, I love Mondstadt. I'm attached to Mondstadt. Even if I had trauma playing Dragon Spine last time, I still have fun. Nowadays with Albedo, I go back to Dragonspine. I always go to Albedo's workshop, just stand there, just kind of listen to the music. It's a fun experience. You could just go without exploring the rest of Genshin and it's still fun. I managed to reach AR 60 with only like 20, 10, 4, 7% each region because I can't be bothered to do world quests. And the game was still fun for me. I honestly love playing Genshin, and Wuthering Waves just doesn't feel that void in me. I love going to the theater in Fontaine and listening to the music. Genshin's music is just unparalleled. It is truly sad how Genshin has really fallen to this state. But Genshin at its peak is definitely better than Wuthering Waves. The traveling is at least not clunky, even if it's a pain and you need to ice bridge when Furina can just run on water. But back then I had Kaya to explore. I used Kaya to run from Mondstadt to Fontaine is not a problem. And yeah, it's like the running, jumping, swimming in Genshin is very smooth. Climbing walls is really smooth as well. Combat really smooth as well. And the movement sets in Genshin is actually really pretty. I remember loving the animation effects for Kazuha, Ayaka. The Inazuma characters have fairly decent animations that make me want to get them. But it's like in Wuthering Waves, the only reason why I want to get a limited 5 star is just so that I do not have to use my Jianxing again. Like Jianxing alone, he's helping me to clear the game. Like the other 5 stars I have is literally useless because Genshin can just kind of like, oh, just kind of beat everything for me. Now you say that, hey kid, but you're using an old character to clear the stuff. So why are you complaining? I'm complaining because if let's say I didn't have Genshin on my account or I didn't have that limited 5 star, I mean that standard 5 star healer, the game is honestly a pain. Like you can't you there's no good healer. There's no good 4 star healer in Wuthering Waves. And fighting echoes without like Genshin for me, it's just a pain. And I genuinely prefer the combat system, the elemental system in Genshin Impact. I really don't understand why it's so hard for Wuthering Waves to just remove the cost system. And let's not talk about leveling up artifacts. In terms of leveling up artifacts, Genshin still wins. It's smooth, it's clean, it's easy. You just kind of get the XP, you just farm the XP, you just use other artifacts, and then you're done. Nowadays in Genshin, you can literally just do ley lines, use your just create those I forgot what's the name, condensed resin, and then you can just kind of clear your daily commissions. So honestly, Wuthering Waves is not better than Genshin for me. Like the trailer for Cantarella isn't any better than the interlude quest one because Cantarella is shown to be someone who is traumatized, and yet she's also the same person that's showing her boobs and like fooling with people. Like, I just really do not like how the trailer portrayed her. Like she's just a Guna bait, and as many people have complained, there are barely any male characters in Wuthering Waves. At least in Genshin we have a couple of male characters, even though they are decreasing significantly. I really hope they add more male characters to Genshin, and I hope they make Dunslave playable. But it's like, yeah, I'm just really sad at the state of the gacha games right now. I've also quit Honkai Star Rail, I've quit Wuthering Waves, and I quit Genshin. And yeah, I'm still drawing them because, as mentioned in my first video, like in my previous video about why I've stopped playing Genshin, I'm still drawing it because it's not the characters' fault that the devs suck. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all next time in the next video. All right, so this is Editor Kit here, and I would just like to add on a few points to what I've mentioned. So another issue I have with Wuthering Waves is that the limited event archive isn't even really a limited event archive. Like there was a time when there was this limited time event weapon and I was still unable to attain it. So it's like how is it different from Genshin not giving us a Cinnabar spindle? And let me not talk about how they only give us 5 limited wishes and they give us five standard wishes. I get it. It's good that they give us standard wishes so that we can wish for the standard characters. With characters like Phoebe, Brent, and so on in the game, why would you want to wish on the standard banner? Like in Genshin, the standard banner characters aren't really as good compared to the new characters as well. But having a D look is still better than not having a D look. And having a Jean is better than not having a Jean because she's such an amazing DPS and healer that really saved my life early game. She's 10 times better than Barbara, and she's so much better as well compared to Kokomi to some extent. It's like at least in Genshin, the standard 5 stars are actually good. Kaching might not be a meta DPS Electro, but she did help me clear a lot of my challenges last time in Spiral Abyss. No, Mona might not be able to compare to Farina, but she's still a relatively good buffer. I've tried her and she's really fun. And not to mention, if you have Mona early game, she is a huge boost for your exploration. And she's a standard character. It's like nowadays there's also Mizuki that's also part of the standard characters as well. And she is also one that can help you to travel easily. Even though I'm not a fan of her design, she's still a relatively good standard character. And I'm sure no one minds losing to her. Having her on a team is a huge win. But in Wuthering Waves, if you try to wish for a limited character, Genshin is arguably the only good 5 star on that banner besides that it's her name Verena. I can't remember her name, but that flower girl who is a healer. It's like she's kind of like Nahida, like a healer Nahida, but her movement is so clunky. And no, I do not have her actually. I wish I could have her because then I would at least have a decent healer. I know people are gonna say it's a skill issue for me to require a healer, but it's like it's in the game. If the healer is in the game, there's no reason why I wouldn't use a healer. There are people who tried doing a no healer in Genshin challenge. And yeah, they failed miserably. Like the healers are there for a reason. And if a healer is not healing, then what is the point of the healer? It's like in Honkai Star Rail, at least you have Natalie, who is a good healer. You have Lorcha that is given for free right now during the new events as well. Right, and I didn't have to wish for him. And it's like in Honkai Star Rail, at least they archived all of the events and they really give out the 10 wishes as well as long as you log in every day. So it's like, yeah, like reward wise, how is Wuthering Waves any more generous compared to Genshin or even Honkai Star Rail, right? So yeah, that's why I do not think that Wuthering Waves is better than Genshin. Like they don't even have a way for us to gain back the limited event unless I did not see it. But from what I know, I did not see anything that allows us to gain back the limited time banner, and the events are horrible as well. Now I really do not like playing the events in Wuthering Waves because of the interface. It's like there are so many tabs and it's just so messy and yeah, you get my point.